Good evening, everyone. So, I welcome all to the ninth lecture of Science of Yoga lecture series. So, we will begin our session with invocation recitation video.
ॐ श्री आदिनाथाय नमोऽस्तु तस्मै येनोपदिष्टा हठयोगविद्या विभ्राजते प्रोन्नतराजयोगम् आरोढुमिच्छोरधिरोहणीव योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचा मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोक्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि अथ पातञ्जलयोगसारसूत्राणि अथ योगानुशासनम् योगश्चित्तवृत्तिनिरोधः तदा द्रष्टुः स्वरूपेव स्थानम् अभ्यासवैराग्याभ्यामतन्निरोधः यमनियमासनप्राणायामप्रत्याहारधारणा ध्यानसमाधयोऽष्टभङ्गानि त्रयमेकत्र संयमः पुरुषार्थशून्यानां गुणानां प्रतिप्रसवः कैवल्यं स्वरूपप्रतिष्ठा वा चितिशक्तिरिति
Thank you, Shruti, for the invocation video. Now I take the pleasure to introduce today's speaker to all of you. Maria Wirth is from Germany. After her psychology studies at Hamburg University, she planned a stopover in India en route to Australia. By chance, she came to the Kumbh Mela in Haridwar in April 1980. Realized the great wisdom which India has, wanted to go deeper into it, and never went to Australia. She shared her insights with German readers in numerous articles and two books. Since 2002, she also writes in English. Apart from her blog, she is active on Twitter and Quora. Her first English book is titled Thank You, India. With this very humble introduction, I welcome Maria to in our series and to give her insights into our lecture series of Science of Yoga. And she has been very kind also to this book that I mentioned. She also sent me this book very kindly, and I have a copy of that book with me now. So my mother has also read it and she has loved that book. So that's something she wanted to share with you. Okay, Maria, all up to you.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Soham. I am not a teacher. I am not used to giving lectures, I should say, in the beginning, but it is really a privilege to talk at an IIT. I have great respect for the brain power of faculty and students of IITs. Now, we have heard already a lot about yoga. Also that yoga is the practical side of Indian philosophy. And I want to focus mainly on 2 points here. First point, yoga means to join. Question is, joining what? And I want also to be a little practical, whether we can discover what we have to join. And second point is, especially in the last 20 years, the goal of yoga has been downsized. Yoga is now mainly about wellness. It doesn't do really justice to yoga because yoga is much more than wellness. So I feel I trace this development and I wonder what could be the reason, and I try to give some reason also for this. Now, first point, yoga wants to join what we think we are to what we really are, truly are. It wants to realize who we truly are. We are not a small person in a big world, but we are one with the Brahman. It wants us to overcome our ignorance. And maybe we can also say, especially for today's generation, yoga wants us to get out of Maya. We are in a kind of virtual reality. It's not Elon Musk who discovered it. Maybe you have heard that Elon Musk says there is a chance only 1 to a billion, 1 to billions, that we are not living in a simulation. Now, if Indians do not own up the wisdom of their rishis, I think in a few decades, maybe Elon Musk will be credited of discovering that we are living in a, not in the base reality, as he calls it. And there was recently an article in the Scientific American by one Fahd Khan, and it says, what is the title? Confirmed, we live in a simulation. And then he adds, never doubt Elon Musk again. Look at this. Now, Elon Musk and others, they don't know who is behind this simulation. The rishis know. They told us. And now I think I have to go a little bit into Indian philosophy, into the basics of Indian philosophy, because I realize that even students don't know much about it. You may be an exception because you are interested in this Indic knowledge system. But I recently met some students and I asked them, can you explain to me what Hindu Dharma is about? There was a silence. Then one girl said, we worship many gods. Then I said, have you heard of the one Brahman, who is the cause for all devas? They had not heard of it. So this is a very serious situation, and I am glad that the Indian Knowledge System Division tries to improve the situation. Now, I am not a scholar, I am a sadhak, and I learned Indian philosophy basically in the surroundings of some sages. And the most important influence for me was Sri Anandamayi Ma. I met her right at the start of my stay in India, at the Kumbh Mela in Haridwar in April 1980. And I had not even an idea that there was a Kumbh Mela. I was completely new. I knew nothing, but there were some foreigners who took me to her. She was their guru. And like this, I got introduced into Indian knowledge. Now, she used to say, all is one. There's no difference between you and me. Wherever you look only at Ishvara, at Bhagavan. Your senses deceive you. Now, this is what we call Maya. And strangely, this was not so difficult for me to accept. When I was in school still, even in primary school, I had this habit of scribbling at the margins of a copybook. And I used to scribble this kind of human figures, the outline of it, but they were basically like waves. They were just connected and they looked like waves, human waves. And then I read Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, and he brings exactly this example. He compares Brahman with the infinite ocean, deep ocean, and we humans and all the multiplicity are basically like waves and like bubbles on the surface of the ocean. Of course, the bubbles and the waves, they are nothing but the ocean. But sometimes we identify so much being a wave and we see only other waves. And some of us are convinced that there is no ocean at all. And that when the bubble bursts, there's nothing left. But of course, when a bubble bursts, nothing is lost. The ocean is still there. And the bubble was always only the ocean. Now, the rishis say, there's nothing but the ocean, there's nothing but Brahman. Ultimately, it's all Brahman. Brahman Satya, Jagat Mithya. I was wondering whether myths comes even from Mithya. It's not really true. It's there, there's an appearance, but it is not the truth. Now, we have heard already of the Mahavakyas, but I think it's very important to remind ourselves often of those 4 Mahavakyas which are at the end of each Veda in the Upanishads, and which remind us that we are one with all, one with the great Brahman, one with the pure consciousness. It says, Pragyanam Brahma, Tattvamasi, I am Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. So something is there. It's not a thing, of course. It says, the rishis say, words and thoughts cannot reach it, they just can point towards it. And it is said like, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Truth, knowledge, infinity is Brahman. Or Sat Chit Ananda, maybe you have heard. But these students whom I met, they have not even heard of Sat Chit Ananda. It is true, it's aware, it's blissful. Now, one could ask, what is the value of Brahman? How does it affect our life? What is the point of this philosophy? Now, I heard once a very, very helpful example, I find it. When you ask yourself, what is the most important thing in existence? It's not a thing, but one thing which is so important that without that, nothing would have value. Your life also. In your life, there's one thing which is so important that everything else would have no value. And if you can think of it, we usually don't even take notice of it. We consider it as very ordinary, but it is consciousness. Without this, nothing would have value. And I give you an example. Suppose Bhagavan comes to you and he says, I'm very pleased with you. I will grant you whatever you wish for. As much money as you want, a beautiful house, a beautiful family, a beautiful job, what you can think of. Everything is granted. There will be only one small condition. You won't be conscious. You won't have awareness. Can you see how important consciousness is? Nobody will exchange even billions of dollars for this being aware. And now, our ordinary awareness, of course, it is a reflection of the pure awareness of Brahman onto other things. The mind is basically a mediator. Pure consciousness is Brahman, and we have to join pure consciousness. And how can we join it? We had already talked about it. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodh. When we calm down, when we control the thought waves, then there is a chance that we touch the pure consciousness. As long as we are busy in thoughts, we are lost in thoughts, really literally lost, not in the present, there's no chance. But when we control the thought waves, when we are aware of it, then we have a chance. And Yoga Sara Upanishad says, then there's communion with Paramatma. Then the deep core shows up. And that's from where intuition comes, from where bliss comes, from where love comes. That's our connection to the real thing, to the truth. And it is always present, even now within us. Actually, it's a miracle. I am, and I know that I am. It once really hit me. I was in a plane from Cologne to Paris. I was young, 20 or so. And I was in the corridor and I was looking up into the night sky. And suddenly, really, it hit me. I am, and I know that I am. What a miracle. Maybe it doesn't hit you now, but it is a miracle. So this pure awareness is what we need to get in touch with. And for example, the Tripura Rahasya, an ancient text, it says that this pure awareness shows up even for a fraction of a second between two thoughts or between two perceptions. There's a little gap, but the gap is so tiny that we usually cannot catch it. Pure awareness is always present, but we are not really aware of it. A better method is when we wake up in the morning. Sometimes, it does not happen always, but sometimes you wake up and you are already there, but you are not yet aware who you are. You just know you are, and it is a very blissful feeling. And if you can stay in this state for longer, it is very helpful also. There's another text of Kashmir Shaivism, Vijnana Bhairava. Vijnana Bhairava gives 112 ways, means, methods, how to catch pure consciousness. Maybe you can look into it. Some are a bit complicated, and maybe for yogis who are 24 hours a day yogis, not for everybody. But there are also very interesting comments. One means is, for example, when you are sneezing and after hachi, there's a moment when you have goosebumps. And in this moment, Tripura says, for a tiny moment, pure awareness comes through. Anyway, whenever you get goosebumps, not because of cold, but because something touches you very deeply, this is when pure consciousness touches you. So why should we be, everybody advises, why should we be in the here and now always? Why should we come back to the present moment? Because only here we can be in touch with what we truly are. So it is always available. We do not have to wait till we are 70 years old. Better we start now. But it is also not so easy, because even remembering that we are lost in thoughts is not coming easily. But when it comes to you, when you realize, oh, I am again fully lost in thoughts, then take the chance, at least for a tiny moment, get out, watch, how do I feel now, where I am. And then you can go back, and the thoughts even are fresher again afterwards. When we stop thinking for a while, at least sometimes, then we get more chances And the quality of life really improves, is my experience. And this is just a state of alert attention. You don't think, but just you are aware what is now here present. Now, another point, how do we know that consciousness, pure consciousness, is really the truth? Here also, Tripura Rahasya mentions two conditions for truth. It says, truth must be always. The whole universe is gone. Truth must be always, and it must shine out of itself. It must not need anything to be recognized. Now you can think about it. The rishis say only pure consciousness. That is the only thing which fulfills these conditions. Now yoga would not be needed if Brahman would not be there. Yoga shows us how to, from direct experience, to know that we are not a separate person. Everybody says I, but ultimately this I in us is the same. When I see that my network is poor, can you hear me, Soham?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, then I continue.
Yes.
There's one thing which is very difficult for Westerners to imagine, and unfortunately many modern Indians have become like Westerners. And it is this thing that there could be consciousness which has no content. We are so used to associate consciousness with content, with thoughts, with memory, with imagination. So it shows already in the terminology, because like you must have heard, they talk about mindfulness when basically mind emptiness is meant. So of course, many Westerners and many Indians also are nowadays very afraid to accept something which is not scientifically proven. But you would also know that science is limited. We have talked about it. And for example, science cannot know the goal of life, the meaning of life. But now when we have, the Rishi says there is an objective meaning. Because when we live, when what we perceive as reality, when this is not the reality, it's a true reality, then of course the meaning of life means to get out of it. If we live in a make-believe world, in Maya, Elon Musk says it's true, then we should try to get out of it. Now this is a big project. It needs even more work maybe than getting into an IIT. And usually it is over many years. But in Bhagavad Gita also it is said, nothing is lost. Whatever you try in this direction is very, very helpful. And we don't know where we stand now. What we have done in earlier life, karma is definitely there. For example, Ramana Maharishi, he was only 16 when he realized that there was something eternal, blissfully in him which can never die. So yoga holds also the key for fulfillment, because if we know the meaning, it makes life much more fulfilled. And now Western philosophers often say there is no meaning as such. Everybody has an individual meaning. Everybody can, like the meaning of my life is to become a teacher or something. It's not like this. And the Western philosophers also still say that consciousness dies with the body. It's not the base reality. And this is very strange, because when we go back to even 200 years, when Indian knowledge first reached the West, this Indian wisdom about Brahman, I am Atma Brahma, this was so much valued. especially German philosophers, were very much interested in this knowledge. And you must have heard Schopenhauer. And the strange thing is when you Google today, greatest philosophers of all times, Schopenhauer will come, Socrates will come, but no, not a single Indian. There's something very strange that India is blacked out, but I come to this a little later still. What could be the reason for this? Now, the philosophers were very interested in Indian philosophy, but also scientists. Erwin Schrödinger, he ended his lectures, Atma is Brahma. Imagine. And I read also the conversation between Einstein and Tagore when Tagore was in Berlin. And my impression was that Einstein almost understood Vedanta better, had a better understanding than Tagore. In Germany in the 1920s, the first book on yoga was written already by one Graf von Keyserling. It was a big hit after the First World War. And he wrote, it is incredible how important even short but regular meditation is for inner growth. Please note this, regular, even short but regular meditation. All these philosophers and scientists had no problem with the postulation of Vedanta, that Brahman is consciousness, pure consciousness. What is the point of this universe existing, something existing, if there's no consciousness? This Indian wisdom was very influential on science also, even in the 1930s. Germany sent delegations of scientists to India. Would be a lot to be said about it. I wrote articles about it. But when I was already conscious in 1970, I was 20. Then at that time still Indian wisdom was very much appreciated in the West. Well, the Beatles were in Rishikesh in 1968. I don't know whether you know Beatles. They were a very famous music band. And they were saying it was their most creative time. They were learning yoga meditation under Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Maharishi went also to Europe, to America. He came to Germany. A friend of mine saw him. And I took already initiation into transcendental meditation in 1970, at the age of 20. At that time, I was with Lufthansa in Cologne, in the headquarters of Lufthansa, an intern. And I got a mantra, each mantra, only one syllable. And I was told to meditate 20 minutes, only 20 minutes, not more, but regularly morning and evening. And I really enjoyed it. It was, I was looking forward to these 20 minutes. And after a few months, I had a quite amazing experience that really there was a lot of bliss suddenly expanding, sort of. And I didn't know how one syllable, repeating one syllable could unlock so much bliss in myself. But I stopped meditating because the church was very negative. They warned parents that they should watch out for their children because one could go mad also. And I was young and I didn't want to go mad and I was not sure. And also the people I knew in Lufthansa, they were not interested in Indian wisdom really. But a few years later, when I studied in Hamburg University psychology, there suddenly the atmosphere was very different. One of our assistant professors, she came in a long red robe with a mala and Osho's picture around her neck. And in class, we heard about experiments with yogis who had long meditation experience, and their extraordinary capabilities were studied. It was clear that they could do miracles. They could be buried underground and still be alive after a few days, just normal. They had tremendous strength. They were not affected by heat and cold. They had out-of-body experiences. They could materialize things. All these things was very in the air at the time. Indian wisdom was in the air. And the autobiography of a yogi, for example, the bookshops around Hamburg University were full of Indian wisdom books and Buddhism also. I read the autobiography also at that time already by Swami Yogananda. If you haven't read it, maybe you can have a look into it, because it is so incredible what he says about miracles. I mean, they are so really incredible, but somehow I could not believe that he would tell lies also. And somehow I felt maybe it's possible, maybe such yogis do exist. And I really wished it was true. And even I wrote to this organization which Yogananda founded in California, because I wanted to have a connection with Babaji, if I can get initiation into Kriya Yoga. But this was complicated. I was at the end of my studies. I wanted to go to Australia. I had no address, no email at the time. And so I gave up the idea. They said, you have to study. We sent lessons. You have to study them. Then you have to make a test. And after 1 year, maybe. So, okay. But then I went to India as a stopover, what I thought it was now. It's not a stopover. I'm here now over 40 years. And in the very first week in India, I got initiation into Kriya Yoga. It was really by chance. And I had gone to Osho's ashram from Mumbai, because I wanted, since I was in India, I wanted to see. I was not attracted, but since my professor was so fascinated by him, I also wanted to see him. What he says is good. He says really good things, but the atmosphere I didn't like. It was too much of a club and too much, somehow I didn't like it. But there in the canteen, I met a Canadian woman, and out of the blue, just like this, she said, have you ever heard of Babaji and Kriya Yoga? Same afternoon, I went with her to her guru. So I was very happy about this connection to Babaji, but here also I did not meditate long, because it focuses on the spine, on Kundalini, and soon after I met Ananda Mema at the Kumbh Mela in Haridwar. And she was saying that it is dangerous to focus on the Kundalini because it is a tremendous power. And there are really instances where people have gone mad. And a good guru, good guidance is definitely necessary. And Ma, instead, she recommended bhakti. So I stopped the meditation according to Kriya Yoga. Ma was also very clear. She came absolutely from Vedanta philosophy. She said, life is meant to realize the truth. Truth must come first. All else is secondary. And she explained what truth is. You are one with Ishvara. And how to realize it? Bhakti. I tried. For me, Jnana Yoga came easier. I was reading a lot at that time. I wanted to know about what is meant by God, what is meant by Bhagwan or Shiva, what I called then, but in English we call it God. And Ma said, she talked about Bhagwan as if it is naturally the most, the dearest thing we have, dearest person, not person, you know what I mean? But the dearest friend we have in this life. And we should fully trust him. We should fully focus on realizing these truths and dedicate all our energies to realize our true self. Then, if we do this genuinely, we will be looked after. You will feel light and free. She also said, be 24 hours a day aware of his presence. When you walk, feel he's walking your legs, he's moving your legs. And she was very much motivating us to put the most important thing center stage. It was not so easy, because how to love something what you cannot see? But I tried. I genuinely asked, please let me love you. And I even said one more sentence. At that time I was young, and I added, let me not fall in love again. And I meant it, because I felt, how can I single out one person when Bhagwan is in everyone? It is a long process, but my aspiration, I think it was pure. I really wanted to know the truth. And then I had started to write already about Indian philosophy. And in 1982, I was asked to write about a conference which was happening in Oberoi Sheraton in Mumbai, convergence between ancient wisdom and modern science. It was organized by the International Transpersonal Association. We had heard in an earlier lecture, somebody was mentioning transpersonal psychology. And I mentioned, no, in the 70s and 80s, Indian wisdom was almost mainstream. And the flyer of the conference, it mentioned that the conference is held in India because India's wisdom has inspired this new branch of psychology. So India had a good image at that time, especially among young people. Of course, at that time also many hippies misunderstood India's wisdom. They copied the long hair of the sadhus and the chillum and did not understand the wisdom, did not want to follow the discipline. But generally, Westerners felt India had something which was badly lacking in the West. It had the wisdom about who we are and what is the purpose in life. And it has still a connection to a magical, supernatural dimension, which we are so much missing in the West. You know, sometimes when Indians say, we are not anymore the land of the snake charmers and those people who do the rope trick, actually you don't realize we envy you for this. We wished we had somebody who can climb up a road. It seems so impossible that it is even possible. I mean, but so India has something, and please keep it so precious. Yeah, at the conference, there were of course many psychologists, but there were also scientists. There was Fritjof Capra, physicist, Karl Pripperam, neurologist, what was his name? Rupert Sheldrake, biologist, Carl Bohm, he was brought in via a video. Strangely, Indian scientists were missing. And only later I realized that maybe Indian scientists were hesitant to join some kind of new age ideas, which was based on Hindu tradition. Because only later I realized that the British had really done a very good job or a very bad job to cut you off from your tradition, to make you look down on it, to make it look primitive. And it was so insidious because they shipped truckloads of your ancient manuscripts to England, and they are all over the world. Germany has many, even China. I Googled once how many ancient Indian manuscripts has Oxford University Library, around 8,000. And they have top scientists like Kanad. So Fritjof Capra at the conference, he presented the new paradigm of physics in tune with India's wisdom. And he got a standing ovation. He was saying, all is interconnected. Nothing is separate. All is one energy. Our senses deceive us. And he added, I remember this, he added, in all likelihood, this one energy is conscious. This was fully in tune with India's wisdom about Maya. And I thought now Indian wisdom will become common knowledge. It will go mainstream because science also supports it. But I was very wrong. Now, 40 years later, India's wisdom is much less common knowledge than at that time. And this is a very strange happening, and we should really discover what is the reason. There's something not quite all right going on. For example, from a personal angle, in 2001, I received a letter from one editor of a magazine telling me, as you must have noticed, spirituality is out, wellness is in. Spirituality is out, wellness is in. I had not noticed this. Of course not. And I did not understand it also, what had happened. Why would Indian spirituality, Indian wisdom be blacked out when it is so precious for humanity? Was it directed from somewhere? Was it a danger for Christianity? Of course, it's a danger for Christianity. But even without this danger, Christianity is losing so many followers in the West right now. A steady stream goes out, and Christianity is often criticized. So I don't think this would make much difference anymore. But so who is interested that Vedanta philosophy of it all is one, which was presented by scientists also in 1982, does not become common knowledge? Officially, science, even after 40 years, after Mumbai, still has not come to the conclusion if the energy is conscious. It cannot come to a conclusion. Science cannot prove it, but science also cannot disprove it. It cannot falsify it. But why is this theory that consciousness is a secretion of the brain, why is this theory made to look respectable? And the theory that this energy, this Brahman, is conscious, the basis of everything is conscious, it's made to look like a fringe and not respectable? I don't know. Science cannot prove that energy is not conscious, and yet they make it look as mainstream scientists. There are, of course, scientists who say the basis is conscious, but they are not the mainstream. They don't have so much power. I got a hint what could be a reason for demeaning India's wisdom. And this is a bit, I came across a declassified CIA document. It was declassified in 2003, 20 years after the report was written in 1983. Now remember, in 1983, Indian wisdom was still generally appreciated. But what had happened at that time, the American military intelligence had sent a commander to the Monroe Institute, which was studying out-of-body experiences, to learn about out-of-body experiences and to give a report if those out-of-body experiences, if they are useful for the military. And he made an interesting statement. He said, yes, they are useful, especially for information gathering. And then he said also people must be prepared that they may encounter entities when they are out of body. I mean, very strange, but I want to read to you something which he wrote. It's a 30-page report, a very long report. I went through it. It's very interesting also. He tried to put it in a scientific language, but he says, for example, he talks about that the universe is like a hologram, which is a thought in Indian philosophy also. The classic description of the universal hologram is to be found in Hindu Sutra, which says, in the heaven of Indra, there is said to be a network of pearls so arranged that if you look at one, you see all the others reflected in it. And then he continues, I have cited this quotation because it shows that the concept of the universe, which at least some physicists are now coming to accept, is identical in its essential aspects with the one known to the learned elite in selected civilizations and cultures of high attainment in the ancient world. Can you imagine? This was known to the learned elite in selected civilizations and cultures of high attainment in the ancient world, India. The concept of the cosmic egg, for example, is well known to scholars familiar with the ancient writings of the Eastern religion. Isn't this really amazing? So the American military intelligence, they know about it. They do research the miracles also, materialization, bilocation, for sure, but they don't want common people and to know it. And I think they don't want Indians to take it seriously. We have managed now for so long to keep Indians away from their tradition. And now suddenly Indians wake up. And I think they don't like it. And that may be the reason why Indian Hindu tradition is now so much blacked out. You will, whenever something is mentioned about ancient cultures, it will be Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia. Very rarely India is mentioned. And India is the only one which is still alive, no? Which is still living. And I noticed something else. For example, this very famous Yuval Noah Harari. He's a philosopher of World Economic Forum. I heard him recently say that he says we should forget about the concept that we have a soul or that there's a God. Humans are now hackable animals. And he says there are now many useless humans because of IE, and IE is more efficient. Is a suggestion, what should we do with these useless humans? And can you believe, I heard him say it, he said, we can keep them busy with drugs and computer games. Now, they want to dump us down, it seems, I don't know. But please treasure your heritage, study it. Vivek Ebroy, he claims there are still millions of ancient manuscripts which have not been studied yet, and several also in the scientific field. By the way, in the 80s, I met a research scholar from a German university, and he told me that he has a 2-year grant to research, to study ancient scriptures, not for spiritual clues, but for scientific clues. Just to tell you, West is after your knowledge, and they tell you it's not worth anything. So Vivek Ebroy says there are so many which are not yet studied, but even more important, since to study these manuscripts is please go inside. Try to connect with what you truly are. Einstein once said, the scientist of the future must be a man of expanded consciousness, person of expanded consciousness. So it means he has to be a yogi. So I hope you all become yogis and you stand by the wisdom of your rishis, by the insight of your rishis. Maybe you won't become yogis like Babaji with all these powers. All Patanjali Yoga Sutras, others, they all talk about these powers. They are for real. Physical laws can be put aside when we touch the truth. But we need to get in touch with our essence, which is always present and waiting for our attention. And it is guaranteed that the quality of your life will be improved. So this is so far what I wanted to tell you. And now thank you for listening so far. And Sohamji,
Yes.
you have sent me a few questions. And I think several I have answered already. Should I go through a few more? Yeah.
I think we can take questions directly from the participants who are here. And if we don't have any questions from here, you may have one or two of them answered, which I sent you there beforehand.
I would like one question. I would like to tell a little example also.
Yeah, sure.
One question is, who is a perfect yogi in today's world? I just want to tell you, don't underestimate even sadhus who ask for money. I don't mean every sadhu. There are surely sadhus also who are maybe even criminals. We don't know. But I was at the Kumbh Mela in 2021 in Haridwar on Shivaratri, for Shivaratri day. And I was standing by the roadside and the akharas came for Ganga Snan. And the first akhara was Naga akhara. And one Naga sadhu stopped in front of me and he said, 100 rupiah de do. I gave him 100 rupee and he walked on. Then soon after, another sadhu stopped who had orange cloth. He stopped, 100 rupiah de do. I opened my purse, I gave him 50 and 20. I didn't have 100. So he said, please baki hai, but you're missing. And I said, look, I have only 200. Can you give back? Ah, main de dunga. So then I gave him 200 also. Now he had 3 bills. And he folded them very small and pressed it in my hand, said, close your hand and keep it closed. But somehow I opened it quickly again and the paper became big again. So he said, I told you to keep it closed. So he folded it again. I was actually happy that I opened it because otherwise I might have thought maybe he distracted me and he put something else in my hand. So I saw the paper was there, the money was there. So he folded it again, pressed it in my hand, keep it closed. After about 4 or 5 seconds, Sohamji, I felt it just doesn't feel like paper anymore. It feels smooth. And I opened my hand and there was a little Shiva Lingam. The money had gone. How can this be explained? And the nice thing, even next day I went to an ashram, and in the ashram shop there, right at the entrance, I didn't look for it. There were little plastic pouches with exactly the same Shiva Lingam. Maybe a little bigger, but basically the same spatik type of Shiva Lingam. I asked the price and he said 160 rupee. He gave back. Isn't it? I mean, I was so stunned. People around me, some people from Gujarat were standing next to me. They were also, how is it possible? So there are so many things I feel which we don't know. And we should not be so sure that we know everything. When you are young, you are maybe very prone to think like this, but yeah, be careful. There are so many things which are possible. Okay, Soham. Then
Okay,
that
so
was one question. Some
yeah,
more would be there, but we can, yeah. How much time is still left?
yeah, we can have 15-20 minutes of questions. So you had one question you wanted to discuss?
No, I had this, who is a perfect yogi, and I just
Yeah,
wanted to
and
tell you.
give this
So
give
I
this
don't
to
know
in
who is
this.
perfect, but there may be great yogis in some caves and so on. But if even a sadhu who walks just by, and if I had given him 100, he would have walked on. If it just gives me back in a miracle, I mean, it's amazing. No?
Okay, nice. So I have here hand raised by Parag Samel. So I will unmute you, Parag. You can ask your question to Maria ji. Parag, you are unmuted.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can hear you.
yeah.
Maria, you were very genuine in what you said about your experiences after you met Anandamayi Ma, and she is absolutely a epitome of love and peace. So, in your personality and in your talk, you have represented her at many times today. I would like to ask you a question. If you have gone through the teachings of Raman Maharshi, what do you think about it? It is a Jnana Yoga practice, which is the ultimate yoga practice. And what is your opinion about Raman Maharshi's teachings?
I love Ramana Maharishi's teaching. In fact, I mentioned, no, Bhakti Yoga was for me more difficult. For me was Jnana Yoga, it came more natural. Even though I tried to develop love also, because I think Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, they both have to go together. But I considered Ramana Maharishi as one of my gurus, actually. In fact, I didn't want to have a living guru in the beginning. For 7 years, I didn't have a guru because I was frightened that I have to do what he tells me. And if he tells me to go back to Germany, I didn't want to do this. So, yeah, Ramana Maharishi, he wouldn't tell me this. So I read a lot of him, and this sinking into yourself and trying to find the source of where the I thought comes from. It is very helpful and very important. And he says also, no, you can't do more than that. You just can sit at the door, basically, and wait to be let into it. Ultimately, it is grace. That also Goraknath also says, no, the ultimate, whether you really realize who you are fully, that is ultimately grace. But you do your best, and until one day it will happen. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. You have given the right opinion about Raman Maharshi and his teachings. Have you been to Tiruvannamalai, his ashram, anytime?
Oh yeah, often.
Oh, I see.
First time in 1984, yeah.
I have been going there since 1970.
Oh, nice.
So nice talking to you. I wish you
Yeah,
all the best.
nice. To you also, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Parag, for the question. We have one question from YouTube audience. One has asked how we can learn Kriya Yoga. So you have any answer for that? How we can learn Kriya Yoga?
I met somebody, this Canadian, she took me in Pune to a guru who was a disciple of Swami Hariharananda. Hariharananda has an ashram in Puri, Kriya Yoga ashram. His guru was Yukteswar. Babaji, his disciple was Lahiri Mahasaya, and then his disciple was Sri Yukteswar, and then Yukteswar had two close disciples. One was Swami Yogananda, who went to America. He sent him to America, basically. And one was Swami Hariharananda, who was younger, and he stayed in Puri. So I assume that in Puris there would be somebody who is authorized to give initiation, or the self-realization fellowship, which put me a little bit off with their demands that they will send lessons and tests and so on. I don't know. I mean, it will be better to meet somebody in person, I think. And since you are in India, it is maybe more helpful. But I don't have an address right now. It must be on the internet maybe now also. Yeah.
Can I
Which is
answer this question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I answer this question on Kriya Yoga?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. If you have some insights, please go ahead.
Sure. I have taken Kriya Yoga Diksha in 1968, and of course, I have discontinued this after going deeper into the Raman Maharshi's practices. However, for Indian people, it is easier to connect with Yogada Satsanga Society, Ranchi, and they have the course of Kriya Yoga by post. They send the lessons. You have to study the lessons, and then later on, after certain number of lessons you complete, you are eligible for Kriya Yoga Diksha by post, or you can personally go to Ranchi and attend the retreat to take the Kriya Yoga Diksha. I have taken a direct Kriya Yoga Diksha from Daya Mata in 1972 when she visited Mumbai. So even today also, there are many people who have been Kriya Yogis are communicating with me, and I guide them to join the Yogada Satsanga Society. However, when I traveled all over the world, I used to visit the self-realization fellowship centers, which is of Kriya Yogi centers in different parts of the world, and I used to attend their meditation this thing uh, timings also. So it's good, but once you have learned what Kriya Yoga and its efficacies and things like that, and then later when you understand the importance of Sahaja Yoga, which is taught by Raman Maharshi, then later on, slowly, you tend to get connected with Raman Maharshi more than the Paramos Yogananda, who has written the autobiography of a yogi. So if this is enough, then online you can Google that Yogada Satsanga Society address and write a letter to them. If the person is in Mumbai, I can send the address which is in Wadala, and there you can go to the center for Yogada Satsanga Society. They give you the form for application and certain amount of fees for receiving the lessons by post or by courier, and you can study them on your own. And if you have any difficulties, you can always contact any senior practitioner and get your difficulties solved. Is it okay?
Okay, thank you, Paragji, for your answer, and I hope that clears the doubts on that question on Kriya Yoga. So, Vidya Surendran ji is there who wants to ask a question. So I will unmute her. And Vidya ji, you can ask your question.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Vidya. Now you are not audible. Hello?
Vidya ji? Vidya ji, you are not audible now.
Okay, can you hear me now? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Maria ji, thank you so much for this beautiful talk. As always, it's very enlightening, and it's very inspiring for us to hear these perspectives from you. So my question's actually two parts of it. One is that I'm sure you would have read a lot of the Hindu scriptures. So which of the texts was most enlightening for you? And if you have read the Bhagavad Gita, definitely you would have read the Bhagavad Gita. Of the chapters, which chapter was the most inspiring for you? I hope my question was clear.
Which texts? This
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
were read sometimes. Yeah.
No.
Sometimes yeah.
No, carry on, Maria.
Vidya?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Please carry.
Yeah. For sometimes I really like Tripura Rahasya. Ramana Maharishi recommended to read it. Tripura. I think he got it even translated.
Okay.
Tripura Rahasya into English, or I'm not sure now. But I had great difficulties to study it, to get it from a bookshop, and I finally found it in Shivananda Ashram.
Okay.
And I studied it. I went to Yamunotri on the way, and on the way I studied it. And it is a talk between Parasuram and
Okay.
Dattatreya mainly.
Oh.
And what I quoted from the Tripura Rahasya, and I found it absolutely wonderful.
Okay.
And then maybe I should tell something even more very stunning. I wanted to study it in a quiet place. When I went in Barkot, I went to the forest office if I can stay in the forester's house. And he said, look, Barkot is a busy place. You go to Kangyani, a small place. There you can stay peacefully for weeks. So I went there and I studied the Tripura Rahasya really intensely.
Okay.
And then later, I came to know that Kangyani on the Yamuna is a place where Jamad Agni is supposed to have had his ashram, and Jamad Agni is the father of Parasuram.
Right.
I mean, I got goosebumps when I heard this. So maybe the Tripura Rahasya was one very much I like, and also Kashmir Shaivism, the 4 books of Kashmir, Shiva Sutra especially.
Oh, okay.
And which chapter from the Bhagavad Gita, I don't know. I keep opening and reading. It's not so much that I read the chapters. And yeah, Bhagavad Gita is very helpful. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Maria ji.
Thank
you
you
so
Vidya
much. Yeah, thank you. Really nice listening to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Soham ji.
Thank you, Vidya ji, for your question. And there is one question in the Q&A box. So as you had said that there were much harm done by the Westerners, the question is how we can undo the harm caused by the Westerners. Your
by
opinions?
becoming yogis and by studying your texts. My impression. And
So I think
Sanskrit
you already
also.
answered this during your lecture. So
Yeah.
you already.
But there was a similar question on what you sent me, that you said Germany is being at the forefront of European Renaissance, science, maths, and so on. What can India learn from Germany to be successful in its Vedic Renaissance? I want to tell you, Germany was successful because it had so much knowledge from India. I mean, it's very clear. In Germans, there is one philosopher, Heinrich Heine. He said some 200 years ago, we Germans, we have to watch the huge ships laden with treasures and gold from India passing us and going to England. But we Germans will not be left behind. We will take their knowledge. And our Sanskrit scholars will provide us this knowledge right here in Bonn and Munich universities. You should be aware of this. I mean, it pains me. And the credit is not given. And whenever somebody mentions now anything, like when you Google the greatest philosophers of all time, not one single Indian comes. When you Google greatest scientists of all time, one, I think, Kanat, maybe, I'm not sure now, Aryabhat, Shayad Aryabhat is coming. But it's so unfair. They quote Socrates, Plato, it's only Greece And this Renaissance, which they say European Renaissance era of enlightenment, it is based on Greek, rediscovering the Greek wisdom. No, it coincides with when Indian wisdom reached Europe. But they don't want to tell it. You know, Germany, they took a Brahmin from Telugu-speaking Brahmin, and I wrote down somewhere the name, Dandlavati Shastri. They took him to Germany to decipher ancient manuscripts, how to make missiles in the 1930s. I think there's so much which is not known in India, and I wished, you have no reason at all. There was one lecture, I was a little wondering, there was one lecture which advised you to study very thoroughly consciousness, and you make thorough papers, really good study, so that it will be accepted in the West. I mean, you know what I mean? It is, they should try to be accepted by you. It cannot be proven that energy is conscious or not conscious. It has to be realized, and it has to be realized by own experience. This self-realization, it is not mediated. It cannot be mediated. It cannot be given also. It cannot even, Gorakhnath, Mahayogi Gorakhnath, he has a wonderful book, Siddha Siddhanti Patati. It is maybe even more details than the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And he says also, it is not, even books, they don't help much. It needs your own, you have to realize it yourself. Tips can be given, but it cannot be given. Was I too strong, maybe? I sometimes get very, very, sorry, in the...
That's all right, Maria. Yeah. So that's true, quite like what you said, we have to practice this. Yoga is meant for practicing and realizing. That is one thing that we must all understand. The studying can go in parallel, but it is secondary to the realization that we would have when we practice the yoga and pursue it with the intention of realizing. The intention is primary, as I have heard by many people.
Motivation must be pure, no? The motivation must be very pure. If motivation is that I be better in my studies or so, then it won't work.
Right. Yes.
And remember Srinivasan Ramanujan? Why was he so great? Imagine, I once thought, no, imagine he would be alive today, it would happen today, and he would go on a news channel and he would be asked, how do you get these great ideas? And he says, my Namagiri Devi tells me. How would we react?
But actually, if we all look very closely, the ideas really come to us. We don't invent the ideas, or we don't invent whatever
Exactly, yeah.
they all come to us, and we just we pass it on to others.
It's not ours, really. It
it.
comes from somewhere, and
It's really not ours, right? If we really
but Westerners
come to
patent it.
understand that.
No, Westerners patent it. They
Sorry?
patent also your knowledge. They make patents. How do you pronounce it? You know when
Yeah, patents, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so that was a very good lecture that we had today, and Maria had also discussed some of her own personal experiences in the journey of yoga, in the journey of being a sadhak, and we all may take inspiration from that, and we may pursue that journey ourselves, and following that journey we may become a bit perfected and with expanded consciousness that Einstein has told us about, that we must be of beings of expanded consciousness in order to like give some value back to society with our with whatever we do and whatever we pursue in life. So I think with that we can give a closure to this session, for which I would request Shruti to give the formal vote of thanks and take this session to its formal closure. Shruti.
At the very first, we thank Maria Ji for accepting our invitation and adjusting her routine to make time for this lecture. I am sure the lecture would have given a lot of takeaways to the audience. Coming to the audience, we must extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the overwhelming support we have obtained from them for our lecture series, with the registration mark crossing over 1350. The success of the lecture series cannot be possible without your overwhelming support. We thank our director, Professor K.K. Pant, and our Dean Academic Affairs, Professor Apurva Kumar Sharma, for lending their constant support to our efforts. We also thank Professor Anil Kumar Gaurishetty for his able leadership to the IKS Committee of IIT Roorkee and being a source of encouragement and enthusiasm for all of us. We also thank the various IIT Roorkee authorities and officers who had always been available to solve our problems and extend their support in organizing the lecture series. We must thank all the IKS student volunteers for all the background work carried out for successful conduction of the program, starting from managing email communication to setting up webinar sessions. Also, a special thanks to Raghudev sir for creating the beautiful invocation video, lending his own voice in the recitation. Apologize to anyone whom I may have missed, but heartfelt thanks extend to one and all who came together to make the event success. Thanking again our esteemed speaker for sharing her knowledge and insights with us. I declare this session closed. Our next and last session of this series is on 21st August, for which communication will be held soon. We officially end the session with Shanti Mantra recitation, for which I request Anjalika to take over.
Anjalika, you are muted. Please unmute yourself.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.